I wanted to pick the brain of somebody I admire as much as anybody on the political scene. Newt Gingrich, of course, former Speaker of the House. I'm praying that Nancy Pelosi gets fired from her position as Speaker of the House come November the 8th. But we are living in such insane times. I need clarity. I need a calming voice. I need Newt Gingrich, who joins us right now. Mr. Speaker, you're like a lighthouse when there's a storm on a ragged coast of Maine. I need a lighthouse. I need a lighthouse of clarity, some political wisdom. I need some optimism. And I got to ask you, and I want to start with Lindsey Graham deciding to try to advance federal legislation on abortion some, 53 days before the midterm election. What's your take on what Senator Graham has said, what he has done, and the pushback that he's getting, and certainly the Democrats seeming to delight in the timing of it all?
Well, I think, frankly, that's not helpful because, first of all, I think the states ought to be weighing in on this, making their decisions and deciding, which is where it was before the Supreme Court intervened 50 years ago. But second, I think what Lindsey's trying to do is offer a position which is, in fact, the majority American position. The Democrats' position of partial birth abortion, tax-paid abortion, and abortion up through the 9th month is, in fact, about a 23% position. And most Americans would regard that as extreme. And, of course, the Democrats want to pin the Republicans as being for no abortion under any circumstance. And I think Lindsey was trying to send a signal that there is a middle ground and that it's the Republicans who are willing to be on the middle ground, not the Democrats. So I think that's his intent. But I think, frankly, anything which takes us away from talking about the economy, crime, illegal immigration, the right of parents to know what's going on in their children's school, anything which diverts from those topics is not necessarily to our advantage because we're going to win big on those topics.
I had a friend who said that the abortion debate is horribly complicated, and it is. There's no way around it. It's a difficult issue to have, and it certainly potentially drives women, I guess, into the Democrat voting rolls if women of any political ideology feel that what they see as a right is taken away. Of course, this Supreme Court said Roe v. Wade was wrong. There's never been a constitutional right to an abortion. The states get to decide, and I'm just confused. I'm baffled by this, but I keep saying over and over again, don't be distracted. There's a lot of distractions going on, and the Democrats want the distraction.
Right. That's why I think we're far better off to start with the crisis in the cost of living. The fact that this week's numbers were terrible. Look, the Democrats want any topic which gets us away from what I said a while ago, which is the cost of living crisis, including the cost of energy, the rising crime rate in big cities led by Democrats, and with that, the rising drug overdoses, the challenge of parents being allowed to know what's going on in their children's schools, and the crisis of illegal immigration. So from my perspective, anytime we're talking about topics other than those, we're not gaining ground on the scale we could be. And that's why I would come back to those over and over again and basically not engage in the debates. The Democrats would like this election to be about Donald Trump and about abortion. We would like this election to be about the totally failed big government socialist policies, which are bankrupting us at the grocery store, bankrupting us. When you watch, when New Hampshire, for example, goes out to buy heating oil in October, General Baldock is going to dramatically pull ahead of Senator Hassan because people are going to be in sticker shock.
Right.
And I think this is the kind of thing we want to focus on.
And, there's such big picture issues at stake. Your book, which came out a month or two ago, Defeating Big Government Socialism, Saving America's Future, is so crucial. I finished it a week or two ago, and I was so grateful for your ability to put into very, very clear terms what we're up against. This is what we're witnessing, Newt, in this country is unlike anything any of us have ever seen before. I knew it would be bad. I didn't think it would be this bad. It's worse than I imagined. They are absolutely embracing tyranny, socialism, everything that challenges American norms for many, many years, and it's almost like we're just watching it with our mouths hanging open. People are in a state of shock.
Well, I think it's hard for people to realize how dramatically things have changed in the last few years. I mean, if you go back to Barack Obama running for president in 2008, the scale of change, the speed of change on everything. I mean, if you look at the overt effort to create anti-white racism and to create selection systems for colleges and for jobs that are both anti-white and anti-Asian, it's astonishing. And of course, you're seeing a tremendous reaction against it. I mean, the Hispanic community is deeply opposed to what they're seeing happening. They are deeply opposed to what's happening to their paycheck and their pocketbook, and they're deeply opposed to the liberal Democratic policies that are putting murderers back on the street. So I think all of these things are coming together, and I think when you go state by state, we're beginning to pull ahead in a way that I find very encouraging. But we're going to have to fight all the way to Election Day because the propaganda media is going to be consistently against us, and they're combined with the social media giants in California. They're going to try to create an iron wall that blocks the American people from having the conversation that I think is important. But in the end, it doesn't work because people go to the grocery store. People go to the gas station. People watch the local news and see the latest murder or rape or carjacking. And the result is the American people are increasingly recognizing that big government socialism just doesn't work. And I think that's a problem that the Democrats will not be able to overcome.
I want to take you to Pennsylvania when we come back because this is such an important race, this race between Dr. Oz and John Fetterman and what this is turning into. Holy cow. Newt Gingrich is our guest. You got to get his book, incidentally, Defeating Big Government Socialism, Saving America's Future. It's out. Check out his podcast, Newt's World, Gingrich360.com. This is one of the smartest guys in America. According to Talkers Magazine, I got 7.5 million people who listen to this show every week. I've gone on an exercise, and I have actually tried to bribe one listener who's going to support John Fetterman in the U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania to call the show and explain what you like about him, why you're supporting him. Newt, I tried all week. I can't get a single Fetterman supporter to call. Now, I've got no problem with progressives calling the show and disagreeing with me. We got a lot of people who listen, a lot of people from all walks of life. And yet I hear from Pennsylvanians who say, oh, Mike, the Fetterman signs are everywhere. There's more yard signs for Fetterman than Oz. What case could anybody make for supporting a man who's trying desperately to hold off on any debates, who's got all kinds of health challenges, and of course you pray for his recovery. I hope he's going to be okay. He can't apparently even have a debate without a practice session that he's demanding with the actual moderators and have the questions on closed captioning because evidently he can't understand what people are saying to him. Newt, how is there any way Dr. Oz doesn't come out victorious in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, look, I think, you have to recognize that Dr. Oz, first of all, received $40 million in negative attacks from his primary opponent that battered him up pretty good. Then he had a hostile news media, and he had, I think, a very clever Fetterman campaign against him for several weeks designed to isolate him from Pennsylvanians and make him, remind him that he had come from New Jersey and all that stuff. Right. So all of that, I think, to some extent, meant that he was starting the race 30 or 40 yards behind Fetterman, who had won as a lieutenant governor candidate, and who did have a pretty easy primary. But I think the problem for Fetterman is, for example, that in Philadelphia, which now has the highest murder rate in the city's history, crime is the number one issue for 70% of Philadelphians. Well, Fetterman both has 2 convicted murderers on his payroll. He voted 25 times to release murderers when nobody else on the board of parole would vote with him. He has called for releasing 1/3 of all the criminals in Pennsylvania. And you look at how radical he is basically for the legalization of marijuana and the decriminalization of all other drugs. And this is at a time when Pennsylvania has the 3rd highest drug overdose rate in the entire country. He is against the oil and gas industry when Western Pennsylvania is the fourth largest center of natural gas production in the United States. I mean, you just go down the list, and I think if Oz just continues to do what he's doing, campaign out, get to the maximum number of small towns, be seen as physically capable, open to people, helping people, and at the same time drawing the clear issue contrast. I think that in the end, Oz is going to win this race. But Pennsylvania is a very challenging state. It's a very big, complicated state with Philadelphia on one end and Pittsburgh on the other end, and then a huge zone of conservatives in the middle. But I have a hunch that in the end, that Fetterman is going to turn out to be unacceptable to about 55 or 58% of Pennsylvanians.
Visiting with Newt Gingrich here on this Friday. You mentioned the economy, crime, obviously the issues that really matter to Americans. Illegal immigration is a huge deal. This week we saw the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, ship 2 planes of illegals to Martha's Vineyard. We saw 2 buses full of illegals sent outside Vice President Kamala Harris's Naval Observatory residence in D.C. Frankly, Newt, I think that's brilliant, because if you're going to be a sanctuary city, you got to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. And of course, these.
Let me deal with those separately. Barack Obama has a 29-acre estate
in Martha's Vineyard.
In Martha's Vineyard, 29 acres. He could personally, as an act of generosity, take in every single one of the people who were flown in, and show that he really is for compassion for all the people he thinks ought to come to the U.S. illegally. Now, I don't think he will, because it's typical of left-wing hypocrisy. But here's a guy who represents, the future of America, who lives on a 29-acre estate. Not a bad deal. Kamala Harris promised all of us on Sunday on NBC that the border was secure.
Right.
Furthermore, my understanding is that the people who were taken to the Naval Observatory, which is the residence of the vice president, are from Venezuela. So maybe they could educate her on the cost of big government socialism in Venezuela and the nature of a police state in Venezuela. And she might find it a very educational opportunity. So the Naval Observatory grounds are pretty big. She could invite them all in, offer them coffee and tea, and chat with them, and maybe learn something. But I think it's a brilliant move that started with Governor Abbott in Texas and now has been picked up by Governor DeSantis in Florida. Let's make sure that it's not just red states on the border that are dealing with illegal immigration. Let's make sure that, Chicago, where the mayor has melted down and suddenly is not really a sanctuary city if you're going to show up. It's only a sanctuary city for political posturing. You just go right down the list. And by the way, the left-wing big government socialists in the Democratic Party aren't learning anything. The Illinois Democrats just passed a bill in the legislature, and the governor signed it, that eliminates cash bail at a time when you have a huge murder rate, a huge robbery rate, when Chicago is increasingly unsafe. The answer among the Democrats in Illinois is to make sure we release more criminals so that when the police pick them up, they're going to be released without any bail. I mean, I think the average person has got to regard this as crazy. And I think that across the country, you're going to see Democrats lose election after election on the crime issue, as well as the crisis in the cost of living.
All right, final question, big picture. November the 8th is everything. We've got early voting going on. We've got millions of Americans who are anxious about the outcome. The Democrats desperately trying to hang on. Do we win? Do Republicans take control of the House and the Senate?
Plus 3 to 7 in the Senate, plus 20 to 70 in the House.
Wow. I like that. I like those numbers. It
all depends. I mean, the left is going to throw the kitchen sink. The news media is going to lie like crazy, and the internet giants are going to try to distort everything. But in the end, people, I think, are going to look at their paycheck. They're going to look at the cost of groceries. They're going to look at crime on the local news, and they're going to say it just isn't working.